Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of PROLIX Comics BOLLIX, the show where we talk about comics ad nauseum. I'm Nick.
I'm dumb vomit.
Okay, excellent.
Well, does vomit have a silent N in it? Because when you see it
Yes,
written down, there's an N there.
yes. There's always an N.
And no one says varmint, do they? I don't think.
No, although I don't know, did Yosemite Sam possibly say varmint?
Varmint. Yeah, but it's almost imperceptible, but it's there,
Mhm.
isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
So that brings us smoothly to
Yeah,
we're talking about
absolutely. To this month's choice, which is
the
we're gonna do
Yosemite
two.
Sam Chronicles.
Yes, we're going to do two. We're going to talk about, well, I'm going to talk about all of this, and Clive might talk about half of this. This is H.P. Lovecraft's At the Mountains of Madness as adapted to graphic form by Go Tanabe or Tanabe Go. But we'll also actually talk about another fairly recent adaptation to comics of the same story by Ian N.J. Culbert, who is I think, a British comic artist. Um, and yeah, they are interestingly different, and I think that they both kind of lean into different aspects of Lovecraft's style. And I think they both make choices in certain areas that are stronger than the other person's choices, but we'll talk
Hmm.
about that in a sec. But I guess you need to know that this is based on a novella, one of two fairly long pieces that H.P. Lovecraft, the horror, science fiction, whatever else you want to say, writer did this and what's the one that Dan O'Bannon made the movie out of called The Resurrected?
That's a good question.
Case of Charles Dexter Ward.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There we
Yeah,
go.
yeah. So, I mean,
Although
Lovecraft,
this is substantial. I think this is probably longer, right? At the Mount of Madness is an even longer piece.
the original, I don't,
Yeah,
to my mind, they're both quite a bit longer than normal. Normally, it's he's a short
right.
story guy. But
At
these
the
are yeah.
at the Mountains of Madness as well has always been my personal favorite. Like I really love At the Mountains of Madness.
Okay,
Um,
I'm
and
still I'm
interesting to reading up about it. I didn't realize it was rejected by
yes
Weird
by
Tales.
Weird Tales,
Yeah.
yeah, and apparently it caused him to really second guess whether he wanted to continue to write at all. He was really hit hard by it not being
Hmm.
picked up, and it was then published by like kind of a rival. Um, I can't remember which it was, but like a rival.
Odd stories.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Queer Tales.
Oh,
Um,
that was an underground publication.
um, but yeah, my favorite will always be Shadow over Innsmouth because of its fishy, wet little seaside village thing, which reminded me of my hometown. But yeah, it's up there. It's up there for sure in the top three, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's something else, and it's interesting as well because it's kind of a sequel and an homage to the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, right? The Edgar Allan Poe,
Yes,
and which is also great. And
I don't know that I've
also,
ever actually read that.
okay, oh, you should.
Yeah.
And there's also the other one, which I've not read, but apparently the other homage follow-up to that story is Jules Verne's An Antarctic Mystery.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's
Hmm.
three of them.
Okay, well, yeah, maybe we need to. Eventually, I'll get around to them. So it was Astounding Stories, April 8,
Astounding
yeah,
stories.
February, March, and April of
Yes,
1936.
not what you said.
Not Queer
Tales of the
Tales.
Mine Shaft. Uh,
That's the one. And so basically, yeah, I mean, in many ways, it anticipates. I mean, the thing obviously comes to mind, right? I mean, I
yeah, well,
think,
John W. Campbell's Who Goes There.
yeah, has to have been
Uh,
inspired by
well,
it. And
I was
then,
thinking about that as well. The interesting thing about that is in some ways people would split hairs because because that's an alien from outer space, right? As opposed to some kind of ancient evil bearing this. But the thing is, all of Lovecraft's stuff is their cosmic elder
Yeah, they
gods.
are.
So
They are aliens.
yeah, they do kind of match up, right?
Yeah, and I would say especially the later film adaptation, the 80s film adaptation, Carpenter's version of The
Hmm.
Thing, I think definitely, I mean, well, he was well, I mean, he did whatever In the Mouth of Madness later on, which is a
Yes,
very
yeah. Oh no,
direct.
definitely. Carpenter's obviously very aware of
Mhm.
the Lovecraftiness of it. Plus, as well, the severed head sprouting legs and scuttling about and stuff. They're
Hmm.
Lovecrafty
Oh yeah.
about that, right? Speaking of movies as well, famously, Guillermo del Toro had tried to make a movie
Yes.
version of At the Mountain of the Madness for years and years and years and years, and then
Which at one point Tom Cruise was
gave up.
attached to, which would have been a fucking disaster.
Oh, he's
Because
attached to everything at some
it
point.
would have become it would have been a Tom Cruise movie, just like The Mummy became a
Right,
Tom Cruise movie, and
right.
then was.
I'm wondering if he'll have
But
another run
he's
at it.
back to it. Sorry, do you know he's back? He's back to talking about it again, and he wants to do it.
Okay.
He wants to do it stop motion,
Interesting. Because
which
yeah,
might
I
be
think it
really
was
good.
it was the expense, wasn't it? I think that killed it. Um,
Yes, and I think that the studio was worried about the niche audience for a very, very expensive movie based on
right, right.
an author less
But
well known.
but yeah, I guess now with Oscar win and stuff like that under his
Mhm.
belt, then he has more clear. Yeah, he's if he didn't burn out on development hell the first time round,
Mhm.
you
Yeah, no,
I
he said he's quite interested and quite interested, as I said, in doing it as a stop motion film, which might in a weird way work even better. I don't know. I think it could conjure up the periodness of it in a way. If he kind of approached like King Kong, like the original.
yeah, there's that. Which one is it? There's a like a featurette from about the early 2000s. I think I can't remember which of the Lovecraft stories they did, and they did it
Yes, Call
period
of Cthulhu.
specific. Yeah, there we go.
And
Yeah,
it's very good,
it
I
is.
think.
Yeah, yeah.
It looks like an old silent and it uses stop motion for some of its,
It's
yeah.
definitely better than Cthulhu Mansion.
Yes. Well, that's not very difficult. But anyway, so apparently Tanabe Go has done a number of these, right? Supposedly he started out doing shorter things. I think one of his first
Yes,
ever solo
the,
comics.
the Hound and other stories was the yeah.
Yeah, he did. I think he did The Outsider first, and then sort of slowly built towards doing longer form.
By the way,
Um,
before we leave the film adaptation thing as well,
hmm,
in lieu of Del Toro's film, I think the nearest I've ever seen to something approaching an At the Mountains of Madness film, there's a Korean movie from 2005 called Antarctic Journal.
okay.
I mean, they don't have the mountains and everything like that.
Hmm.
Shot in New Zealand, actually, standing in quite convincingly for the
Hmm.
Antarctic. And there's an expedition that going to, it's called the Point of Inaccessibility, which is like the furthest point from any sea.
Right.
You know what I mean? And apparently a Soviet team actually reached it in 1958. They're the only people who got there. And yeah, so it's basically this film about this expedition and yeah, something evil, ancient, and so apart from the mountains, but just that kind of basic setup is quite at the Mountains of
Mhm.
Madness. So I think that's the nearest someone's come thus far to a
Well,
to
I mean, I do think what's kind of fun about it, and it makes it a little bit different than a lot of Lovecraft's other stories, is that there is an element of kind of men's adventure story,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
at heart, right? It is like, so there's that part. There is the kind of the exploring this incredibly harsh, environment, and then you layer in this ancient cosmic grand evil and these,
Yeah, yeah.
starfish-headed alien creatures and the rest of it. Um,
It's a bit like I suppose it's as close as Lovecraft would ever get to doing something like an Indiana Jones kind of
Yes.
mashup of high adventure and supernatural stuff.
Hmm.
And yeah, an absolute page turner. I've read it a couple of times actually, and I'll probably read it again one day. Like
Oh
it's
yeah.
yeah, it's get that bath ready,
Hmm.
get some beers lined up,
Yep.
some cheese.
Um, so basically, spoilers obviously in full effect, but yes, a group of researchers from Miskatonic University, which features a lot in Lovecraft's stories. It's a made up place. I don't think there is a Miskatonic River. I think there's a real Miskatonic River, is my understanding, in New
It
England
probably
somewhere.
is a Miskatonic University now, right? So
Oh
someone's
yeah, maybe.
created it like,
Right,
or you can get a
retroactively.
diploma from it online or something.
Right. If you don't go mad before you
Yeah,
graduate.
exactly. And
Um,
it's signed by the Abdullah.
Allah has read.
Yes.
Um, so yes. So in some ways, also he's pulling together threads from a number of his other stories. There's character names that are referenced to other stories because he does this occasionally where he seeds little pieces from story to story, so you do get a sense of a shared world, right? But this one, I think more than many of them, he actually has gone back to the well and pulled specific creatures and monsters and stuff from various of his other stories and try to tie them together into this weird cosmology, right? Where there's this successive waves of alien immigration,
Hmm.
basically, in this ancient prehistory, long before humans, and this is a survival of one group, and they're slaves, right? So the Shoggoths, which I think actually both of these adaptations do a fairly good job of attempting to draw the undrawable, right? Because famously, Lovecraft's stories often break down near the end into like I saw something that could not be described, yet looked vaguely as though it was this, and this, but could not be
The
described.
unutterable, right?
Yes. Uh,
Yes.
but I guess I don't know if you don't have the back half. I suppose you haven't seen what he does with the gigantic
No,
protoplasm.
no.
Um,
Um, should I?
I mean, in a way, it is the other half of the story. So I guess let's maybe what do you talk about how you got along with the first half?
Well, so this was the second of the two I've read. So I don't know if it might have suffered a little bit in comparison to reading the same story
Mhm.
twice. But I was kind of because when you sent me the other one,
Mhm.
which is by
Colbert, the
right, which has this very like tin like kind of
yes,
art style, which at first
yes,
I was like, oh, that's, and then looking at, you know, just from the cover and having a quick look at the inside at Gotanabe's kind of style, oh,
Mhm.
well, clearly this is going to be clearly this is going
Superior.
to be
Hmm.
so much better, but I'll take a
Hmm.
cursory look at the
Hmm.
other one. And I was surprised how well the other one works. Like,
Yes,
really well. Like it's actually got me. There's parts of it that are genuinely quite exciting.
yes,
Uh,
yeah.
so so after that, reading this, I mean, don't get me wrong. This is obviously extremely well done, and yes, you could argue, I suppose, more in keeping maybe with what you imagine, because especially because it's kind of black and white as well, and it's
Yeah.
all these kind of intricate kind of, shadow work and stuff
Yes.
like that.
Yeah.
Whereas the other one's bright and primary colors and stuff. So you'd think, but there's something, the fact that it worked, and maybe the fact that it worked in such a surprising, like I did not expect that approach to
To suit the material.
yeah, but
Yeah.
so it was more of like it was a surprise, like it kind of reinvigorated the source material. It was like, wow, okay, they approached it this way. How he reached that conclusion is like amazing to me that he thought that would work, but he was fucking right because it does. So in a way, this kind of paled in comparison a little bit, just because it was a little bit more what I expected, if you see what I mean. Whereas the other one was
Yes.
such a surprise and such a different way of approaching the material. So maybe the Tanabe unfairly suffered by comparison. Plus, as well, I only read half the story because I didn't realize
Mhm.
there was two volumes. Um,
Right. And in that way, it's a much denser, it's a much, he's kind of, he's even like a telescope is not the wrong word, but he's kind of expanded in a way certain elements of the story and kind of really dealt with them at length. Whereas,
must have taken him
oh
so
God,
long to
to
draw
do
this
the draw.
whole thing,
Yeah.
the size of the one you've got. So
Yeah, I mean
that,
this
yeah,
yeah, you can see it's massive. It's a
yeah,
massive
yeah.
film. And it's I mean it's I think his
Can you
great
can
strengths
you
are
show me
actually
some of the Gribblies in the second
yes,
part?
yes. I'll flip through. But I think some of the like this really his strength is in um just the landscape. I mean, like
Yes.
and he does create this alien underworld.
Quite
Um,
like you got silver edged pages as well. That's quite
yes. Oh, here
snazzy.
we go. Here's one of the Shoggoths kind of first
Right,
explodes out in this
right.
massive protoplasmic eye blob.
So
But
it's a
interesting enough, not that different actually to what Colbert does in
no,
this.
no, no. A
Uh,
little bit more warp spasm, but
yes.
hey,
Uh,
that would be give Tanabe Slain.
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That would
Um,
be interesting. Has there ever been like, because now and again, like for instance, there's like some runs of like um Japanese like Marvel Hulk.
yeah. Or Batman.
Yeah.
Yeah. They've
Has,
had.
has,
Yeah.
have the Japanese ever had a run at Slain or
No.
2018?
But there are
That
certain
would be
artists
interesting.
who think would do an amazing job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but but it's funny. So what I would say, like the strength of Tanabe's book is the feeling of place, I think. And as you said, like, it's that incredible just the drawings of these looming mountains and this
Mm.
oppressive and the amount of ink spent on every page. It
Amazing.
becomes very claustrophobic, right? It's
Yeah.
not even the scenes that are in the icy kind of wasteland still somehow retain the sense of
He must
claustrophobia.
have used up several squids.
I can only imagine. But
Imagine squeezing them into the pot. Very apt for a Lovecraft adaptation.
interestingly, when I read the interview at the back, there was an interview at the back with him of that bigger version, and he himself pointed out something that I also thought before he said it himself. He said I'm not very confident in my ability to draw facial expressions, and it was one thing that I did find that in his book there's a tendency for
Yes,
almost like he's drawn from photographs, but hasn't given the faces a lot of
there
motility,
are.
so it almost seems
Yes,
like repeated kind of the same face for the
which
same
one?
character. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Agreed.
and funnily enough, although it's a much more, as you said, a kind of like an Hergé, however you say his name, Tintin kind of a look. That's one thing where Colbert really does a great job, funnily enough, with very few lines of
Yeah,
putting across a
I
variety of different kind of expressions.
I was very surprised by how much I liked that version. Like I said, to the detriment almost of appreciation. And also it might have been, we've talked about this obviously. I think we've talked about it on here, but we've definitely talked about is the fact that I've always had a slight problem with Tintin where like I I want to love Tintin, but I've
Yes.
never quite figured out. I'm wondering if that might have been my gateway.
Right.
Now I might be ready to appreciate Tintin via that lens because it's got to be an influence, right? That's it's got to be that.
I would think so.
Yeah.
But I do think like from looking at Colbert's other stuff, it seems as though, and this is another place where he seems to specialize in this kind of like period setting, late Victorian, early, like Georgian kind of stuff. So his confidence, he can do with very few lines and still really give you that sense of the costumes looking right, the feel of it looks, it almost in a way feels like a comic that might have been made then,
Yes.
which
Well, you
in
could put
strangely,
Tintin in it.
yeah, totally, and he wouldn't be out of place.
No.
Um, the other thing that I quite like, and this is a kind of a choice that obviously he made that's different than the choice made in the adaptation is it begins kind of like in the present and then kind of flashes back, you know. And
Mm.
I feel like Tanabe's book doesn't really necessarily do that as much. It doesn't kind of begin with the like we've been there, horrible
Right.
things happen, now we're back, and we want other people to not go there.
Yeah, yeah. Weirdly enough, that's the thing. Even though, like I said, on the surface level, Tanabe's version would seem the shoe-in to be the most authentic. There's actually something very authentic about the what you say his name was again? I don't know why I'm
I
having
think it's
Cuthbert.
Culbert, I believe.
Talbot. There we go. I keep wanting
Yeah.
to say Cuthbert, but yeah. But no, I was yeah. So again, I tried to get off that a little bit, but it was just such a surprise. I'm really having trouble getting my
No, I honestly I agree. I was surprised too because I grabbed it. It has at times been up and available on archives.org if you are interested in seeing it that way. But I had grabbed it and just it was almost like an afterthought. Oh, there's another fairly
yes,
recent
yes,
adaptation, and yeah, by the time I got to the end, I was like, oh shit,
yeah,
did I actually like that more than
yeah. I think
Tanabe's
I
much
might
longer,
have.
much more expensive one? And I think I probably did.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too, actually. Surprising. And in fact, the other thing I thought was a bit of a shame was because we ran out of time, but if we'd have discovered that earlier, what I really would have liked to have done, assuming that there's more out there, maybe in the form of like in some anthology comics or something. I'm wondering if there might be some other comics adaptations of At the Mountains of Man, not necessarily
I
graphic novels, but
I'm wondering too, yes, if there was like if it was adapted like by, one of those Warren magazine, like creepy or
exactly, yeah,
something like that.
yeah,
Like, yeah, I am interested in doing maybe a bit of because I know, for example, some of Lovecraft stories were adapted in as far back as the EC,
right, right.
like
Yeah,
Tales
that's
from the
where
Vault and
my mind was going, maybe was, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I would be interested in. So I might do a bit of a try to dig in a bit more and see if there are and
Yeah,
then
you never
just
know, we
what
might.
other Lovecraft stuff there is
Yeah,
that goes
yeah,
back.
we might do a part two. Plus, as well, we should mention this might be an extended
Yes.
Japanomicon, if I'm allowed to
Hmm.
say that.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so we will be doing on Film Crack, we'll be doing the Japanese TV movie version of Shadow over Innsmouth
Hmm. Which I'm
and
very excited about because
and
I love
the
that.
the hentai series Mysteries of Necronomicon.
Which I'm also very excited about for
Yes.
entirely different reasons.
And then something else we may or may not do on Literary Spec is so I have these two volumes of I think there's three. There might be there's at least three anyway. This is the Lairs of the Hidden Gods series, Tales in the Cthulhu mythos from Japan.
Okay.
Now I haven't properly got into this, but what I found most fascinating about this, the first volume,
Hmm.
is the foreword by Ken Asamatsu, Recollections of Tentacles.
Hmm.
So, and also in the back, you've got Cthulhu Mythos manga list
Okay.
and a history of the Cthulhu mythos in Japan. And what's really fascinating is how they link up, you know, the Lovecraft of it and the
Hmm.
Kodoji of
Yes.
it.
Yep.
I
Yep.
haven't dived into this second volume yet. I'm not quite sure. But again, I think it's got some interesting Cthulhu mythos in gaming essay. And I
Right.
suspect I haven't got into it deeply enough, but I've read a couple of stories and read some reviews of this book. And I'm wondering if the original essays might actually be a bit more interesting than the stories. But
Oh yeah, yeah, possibly.
but there could
So
be some gems in it because there are some interesting writers. So yeah, depending on if you want to get yourself in
I'm yeah, no, I'm
one or
definitely
two,
I'm
yeah.
down. Yeah, yeah. Agreed. So also this was I think this might have actually been mentioned in the interview at the back. So a lot of Japanese people's introduction to Lovecraft was through the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game, which
Right,
apparently in Japan was even more popular than Dungeons and Dragons. It was in many people's minds that was the role-playing game. That was the one
right, right.
that popularized tabletop or
Yeah,
whatever.
well, that's the thing. That's what I'm saying. So the essays in this book, for example, there's a lot about that stuff. And yeah, the it is actually quite fascinating because I've always wondered. I think anyone who watched the La Blue Girl and all that stuff, and
Hmm.
also knew
Hmm.
about Love, they must have at some point went, hang on now, like
Hmm.
where does that like enter, right? Like where do those intersect? Like where's the starting point? And I also have another book here somewhere, which is a very large book about basically the history of like hentai manga and animation, and there's a whole chapter in there on like the development of the tentacle in like quite microscopic detail. So
You really get granular.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
well, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking like Doomed Megalopolis as well. All of that stuff had that kind of, to me, it sort of was on the fringes of
mm,
Lovecraft.
mm.
Uh, but
Yeah,
then, and yeah,
yeah,
then you
it
go
was.
back to Hokusai's, squid and girl woodblock prints and stuff, right? And then it's kind of that's
Yeah, no, no,
around a long,
but,
long
but
time, right?
interesting you say that as well. Yeah, the other aspect, other than the tentacliness of it, yes, the whole kind of the Elder Gods thing, the Doom Megalopolis, the Massacada. Yeah, there's that as well, and I'm sure because I think so. Obviously, we have the Doom Megalopolis anime, and there's the film series, the live action film series. But of
Hmm.
course, that's based on a series of novels, right? Which I don't think has ever been translated, but
That
there's
seems
a
strange.
lot of
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff in like it's from what I've read about it, it's a very it might not be good,
Right.
but it's a rich stew of like yeah, conspiracy theories and
Mm.
folklore and you know cryptozoology and
Right.
the bollocks, right?
Mm.
Um
But that can make a heady brew,
yeah, yeah.
when it comes to horror.
But
Um,
anyway, there we go. So
but
so
yeah, weird. The weird takeaway. So the book that I spent $66 on, which was fine, um, was probably not as good as the book that I would have spent less on if I paid for it at all. Sorry.
fell off
You know
fell off the
what?
back
I
of a book.
might.
Fell off the back
I
of a
might
book.
do that.
Yes, yeah. If
I
I
think I probably
copy
should
of
get
these,
an
they'll
actual
be
hard
priced.
copy of this
Yeah,
because it's so good. Okay, so
yeah.
I promise you, INJ Colbert, I will in fact purchase your excellent adaptation of At the Mountains of Madness.
Yeah, 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 no, I wouldn't mind having a copy of that on the shelf too, because it's and I wonder if he's done I'm quite interested to see what else
Yeah, I did.
done.
He has done other stuff in this kind of classics of literature here. Let me just he's done some Sherlock Holmes, Study in Scarlet,
Ah,
of the
interesting.
Baskervilles, The Sign of Four, Dorian Gray, possibly, or possibly not. That might be somebody else actually. It might just be the series, but definitely he did do um, Study in the Scarlet.
Anyway,
Um,
let me save you viewers from
no,
any more
he did do so.
any
Those are all by him. Those are all by him.
any more old man looks things up on internet.
And these,
Hang on now, I've lost it. Yeah, enough of that. We'll do it on our own
yes,
time.
yes,
So
yes.
until next time, where we'll be talking some more PROLIX Comics Bollocks.
Mm-hmm. Things might get
Tickly, tickly, tickly,